Hello, my name is Johnny Jansen and we are not too far away from the Leeds International Festival of Ideas, which is a series of programmes and speakers and events which is about getting you thinking and sparking something inside of you. One of the things that we'll be discussing is the difficult question of can we ever be who we really want to be? And I have someone with me today who is best placed to answer that question better than anybody I can think of, really. You will know her from many years of broadcasting, started at 12 years old at Radio Air, got a first show at 16, then went on to national success and huge acclaim, presenting the biggest breakfast show outside of Yorkshire on Galaxy FM, the legendary Galaxy FM, and latterly Capital FM. You'll have seen her all over the TV, in your national newspapers, and as well as a keen advocate of LGBTQ rights, born out of the fact that in 2014, Steph announced that she was transitioning from male to female. Welcome to the show, Stephanie Hurst.
Thank you very much. It's a bit weird when you do all of that introduction and I hear all that kind of stuff. It's like, gosh.
Is it weird you not doing it because you're so used to being the one who's doing the interviewing?
Yeah, it's odd being the other side of all of this kind of stuff because I'm usually sat where you are. But yeah, when you hear all that kind of stuff and 12 years old, banging on the door of a radio station going, let me in. I want to be on the radio. I want to be on the radio. So desperate to be on the radio as a
Most
child.
people are out climbing trees and throwing stones at windows and all that kind of stuff.
Not throwing stones through windows, but recently actually, when it's been nice weather on the odd day, I went for a walk around the back of the estate, the council estate that I grew up on.
Yeah.
And it's an old Dr. Beeching line from the 1960s, one of the old disused railway lines that when we got to it in the 1980s, was kind of overgrown, but not too overgrown. And that was our playground. And we were, I shouldn't say it, climbing pylons and... Ooh.
Well, it was the 80s.
It was the 80s.
We did it differently in those days.
Stuff like that. And there wasn't barbed wire around them back then, or there probably were, but some bigger kids took them down. But I just was walking around thinking, gosh, this is where I grew up and injured myself on many occasions because all us boys and girls were just, this was our playground.
Yeah.
But I love doing that kind of stuff and being out on my bike. But I also love this thing called radio and music. I was like a moth to a flame.
We're discussing today this concept of identity and can we be who we really want to be. When do you remember, or what's your earliest memory of perhaps thinking, actually, I'm not the person I think I should be. I don't feel like I'm who I am. I
think when I was at school, when you're a child, you don't have the vocabulary to be able to, vocalise how you feel. You just kind of come out with what you think the right words are. And mine was, I'm not a boy. And my mum would say to me, you are. Because at school, they would say, all the boys go over to that side of the classroom, all the girls go over to this side of the classroom. And I would just go and sit with the girls because that was my natural state of comfortableness. That's what I did. So I was like, come back over here. Stay there. And then they'd do it again the next day or the next week and stay there. And my mum there was no internet, so she couldn't look this kind of stuff up. I knew it was a topic of conversation between her and some friends. I do know that.
So she did.
Yeah,
she knew it was more than just a phase.
Yeah, and then she thought my dad was cross-dressing in her clothes. He wasn't. It was me. I won't say cross-dressing because to me it wasn't cross-dressing. Yeah. It was I was
where you felt comfortable.
Yeah, and my parents would go to the local club on a Saturday night when I was 12 because you got left at home in the 80s when you were 12, and don't burn the house down. It's fine. I'm just going to play my records. It's okay. But I would be I had a little studio in my bedroom because my dad was a musician. He'd fix TVs during the day as a day job, but he'd be out, doing band stuff. And when he didn't have a gig, they'd be in the pub. So I would get all his equipment and I'd rig up a little studio. And the next thing I knew, I was completely dressed in my mum's clothes. I have got no recollection of getting from my little studio, walking out across the landing, into her bedroom, into a wardrobe. It just happened. And then I would walk around the block on our council estate in the late 1980s in my mum's clothes.
People must have seen you.
No one saw me.
Really?
I got away with it. I have no idea to this very day, Johnny, how I got away with this.
Because I can't imagine growing up on a council estate in Barnsley.
Yeah.
There are many lads who will have been allowed, and I use allowed in the sense of their friends or people around them would have accepted the fact that they actually saw themselves and were a little girl, not a little boy. I can't imagine it was the most forgiving place for people who struggled with gender identity.
I never spoke about it. I did tell a couple of friends that I struggled with this. Do you know what? They didn't say a word to anyone, which I just, looking back now, I think that is amazing.
Yeah.
That's true friendship, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
When you confide in someone. And, you know, the girlfriends that I had, it feels weird saying I had girlfriends, but the girlfriends I had, I told them as well. And there was my first kind of serious girlfriend was a girl called Jane, who she sadly passed away last year, which is absolutely heartbreaking to cancer. But she was amazing, and she was just 16 when I told her this, and I was 17 or something. And she was amazing, and kind of tried to give advice that she could give at 16 years old, because you're not worldly wise at that age, are you?
No.
But I just told her that I struggled with this. But whenever I told anyone, it always came with a caveat that, don't worry, I won't do anything about it.
Yeah.
But I remember passing my driving test, and I went to my GP and I told him how I felt, because I had a really tough time at 17. I think that's why I came out to Jane. And then I went to my GP and told him how I felt, and he was quite an old GP at that time, and he said to me, it was something along the lines of, strongly recommend you don't take this path in life, you'll lose family, friends, or something else. I remember getting back out of the doctor's surgery, sitting in my car, my Vauxhall Nova, and just breaking down in tears, thinking, I'm trapped. I can't do anything about this. I'm trapped. I don't know what to do. But I'd seen a lady on television called Caroline Cossey. She was a model and a Bond girl, and she was outed by the News of the World in the early 80s. And I'd seen her on TV promoting her new book a number of years before, because I used to go to my local library asking if this book had come in, and when it eventually did, no one else got the chance to get it out, because every time it had to go back every 6-8 weeks, I'd get it back out
By
again.
Hearst again.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And the lady at the library said, you're going to have to let this book back in. You've had it out 17
Either buy
times.
it or put it back.
Yeah, exactly. But I couldn't afford the $12.99 or whatever it was. And so I knew that she'd done it. So she was an inspiration. And I'd seen a few other people in the newspapers. But I felt that I was trapped. So the only other option was to really throw myself into the world of radio, to obsession, to absolute obsession. I was always obsessed as a kid with radio, from getting my first radio at 7 years old, because that's one of your first freedoms, isn't it? You get your bike, that's the first freedom, because you can go to the end of the street and then you go a little bit further and you feel like you've gone on holiday, and then you get your first radio and you can tune around the dial, and that's when you can start to make musical decisions about what you like, whether it's, you know, pop music or something you'd hear on John Peel's show. So radio was always something that was huge in my life, but I thought, well, if I can't be who I want to be in that respect, I can be who I want to be by being on the radio, by throwing myself into this medium so much, to obsession. And probably that's why I may have succeeded, because there was an extra bit of a drive.
Do you think as well that the radio offered a sense of escape?
Oh,
when we do it, we're in this
massively.
little box,
Yeah.
the microphone,
Yeah.
the records. And yes, there are, in your case, millions of people listening, but you can't see them. It's just you, it's the mic, and it's that connection you hope to have one-on-one with
Yeah,
people.
but do you know what? I got bored in the box on my own. I call the studio the box.
Yeah.
Because whenever I put my head out in the studio, in the old show that we used to do, and we were all being dobby, they'd all go, get back in your box. Okay, we'll go back in. Once I'd mastered that bit of getting from A to B with a record, doing something funny or a sketch or a gag in it, and once I'd mastered that bit, or to a point where I thought I'm okay at this, I needed to do more. So that's when I started to look at doing breakfast shows, and I did the breakfast show at Viking FM in Hull. And then from there, we won a Sony Radio Award for that, and we had an amazing time. And then from that, we were poached to go to the biggest commercial radio station outside London, which was Galaxy Yorkshire, which is now Capital Yorkshire. And I created this show called Hirsty's Daily Dose with Jojo, who I spoke to on the way here, actually. We speak a lot. She's like my big sister.
Yeah.
I love her. And a guy called Danny, who I'd known since, gosh, I don't know, 16 or something like that. Stand-up comedian. So we created this show called Hirsty's Daily Dose, and that was wonderful because every show was different. You never knew what we were going to do. There was very little prep involved. It was just stuff that had happened to us and stuff that had happened to the audience, because it was every show is like a field of unpicked flowers, and I just think we can all add so much into this. It's not just us sitting in a box, it's the audience. It's their show as well as ours. Might be our name above the door. Well, it says fire exit, but do you know what I mean? It was just, I got bored with the just going from one song to another when I was younger. I quite like doing it again now, actually, just on my own. But that was the escapism. I loved the escapism of radio, because you can be who you want to be on the radio.
And that for you must have been incredible, because you couldn't be who you wanted to be outside of it.
No. Or I couldn't secret.
Openly, you couldn't do what you should have been able to do, which was just live this life as the person you are. And the thing about radio is, as wonderful and as escape-like as it is, it lasts maximum of 4 hours a day. And for the rest of the time, we have to be in our own heads, and you have to try and deal with the person you're meant to be. And that must have been incredibly difficult for you.
Yeah, because I would leave the studio, especially at Capital. So I'd get on the M1 and drive home. And I've said this before, there's a certain part of the motorway where the carriageway becomes higher than the other one. So I think northbound is quite lower and southbound is higher. And I would literally be driving past this point every day. I was at Capital Galaxy for 12, 13 years. And the best part, I'd say 80% of that, I wanted to do that into the Central Reservation.
Really?
Every day. And I kid you, I'm not joking, because it seemed the easy way. But I knew I couldn't, because I would affect other people, other drivers, and I just wouldn't do it. But I knew I wanted to. I tried to look at different ways of taking my own life, and eventually found the strength to open up to a few friends who were just truly incredible. And you know you are, and thank you. And I'd say they saved my life. And one of my former bosses as well, who when I was talking about this, and he said to me, I was thinking about, what do I do with this? Do I go public with the story? And he said to me, my old boss Mike, he said to me that you could save a life, not lives, but you could save a life. So when I decided to press the button and do something about it, I was just going to go away. I was just going to, get another career, do something else. And he said to me, if you did go public, you could save a life, not lives, just one person. And I thought, well, that one person like I was who saw Caroline Cossey, or that could affect one other person.
It's a huge testimony to you and your strength, but also to the power that we have to help other people.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about can we ever be who we want to be, I don't necessarily think it is just down to what you can do. No. I think it's, there's that saying of it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. I think it probably carries on into adulthood as well, right? Like, we have to have people around us to help us be the person we're meant to be. Because I don't think that we can just walk it alone.
No, and that's why when you've had a bad day, you sometimes reach out to a friend, don't you? And you need to, or your other half, and you just have to you need to empty your head sometimes, don't you? Because sometimes you can't see the wood for the tree, or the tail's wagging the dog, and you're like, I need to talk to someone about this. And that's why we need friends, and we need people. And if people have not got friends or family, that's why amazing people like the Samaritans or other organisations, or for Guys Andy's Man Club here in Leeds as well. There's so many organisations that can really help people just to get out of your own head.
One of the things we're constantly taught when we're on radio is authenticity is everything. Yeah. So I just wonder how difficult it was for you, being this huge radio personality that was known across the country, this really strong identity of Hirsty's Daily Dose, and people thought, that was you. But
I created this caricature.
Yeah, it was. I remember when I first met you, and I'd gone in on work experience to Galaxy, and I got the chance to go in on the show, and I was like, oh my God, it's Hirsty's Daily Dose, it's amazing, it's Danny and Jojo, and it's Hirsty. And I vividly remember you saying, I've created this monster that's got out of control.
It was a monster.
But it was based on you, though, if you see what I mean. And
all three
not
of
the
us.
monster, sure, but your, like you say, your name was above the door. So I just wonder how you dealt with that difficulty of always being told to be authentic, but the real you, or certainly a portion of it, you had to try and hide. That must have been really difficult.
All the signs were there. I very rarely listen back to anything that we did, but sometimes I'll be in an old hard drive or something, and I'll be flicking, and I'll find the Hirsty's Daily Dose folder, which is called HDD. So whenever I see a hard disk digital recorder, it says HDD on it. I always think of the show. And I'll flick in and sometimes listen down to some stuff, and all the signs are there. I pretty much said it on the air without saying it.
Right.
Because I was always going for facials. I was always, anything that was particularly girly, I talked about. So it was always kind of there.
Yeah.
But I just never said it. And I think that was my way of dealing with it. And Danny and Jojo both knew.
Right.
Producers knew. So some of them did. And I didn't tell some of them because I didn't trust them. It was just, I was probably dealing with it in a different way at that point in time. Because I had periods where I was okay for, I could be okay for 6 months.
Mm.
And then it would rear its ugly head again. The dysphoria, the gender dysphoria never goes away.
Yeah.
And I got to a point in my 30s where I was like, I can't continue. I can't do this. I'd ended my long-term relationship. And I didn't want to, but I knew that I couldn't bring her through this and other people that were around me. I just couldn't. I needed to just press stop and find myself. And also spend time of being me as well. So I had some new wardrobes fitted, and I remember when they were being fitted, why do you want locks on them? I don't know. Just put locks on them, because if anyone was staying, they were all locked.
Of course.
Because I'd built a brand new wardrobe for myself, not just physically, but actually the clothes inside it. So there were all locks on them, which are still there, but never locked, of course. And I got to a point where I was like, right, I need to start getting some help with this. So I went out for dinner with my friend Kate in Leeds, actually, all bar one in Millennium Square. And I told her when I was 17, when I had that wobble, when I went to see my GP. And she brought it up in conversation. And she said, I was just wondering, how do you deal with that problem you had, that gender thing? I said, I want to die.
Really?
Just want to die. She went, tell me about it. And so I spoke about it and told her how I was feeling, and told her that I couldn't carry on. I'm trapped in this world because, I've got this amazing, to the outside world looking in, you've got capital pumping 6 figures in to the bank account. There's an Aston Martin sat on the drive. Everything's wonderful. All this is just material stuff. It means nothing.
But we equate it to happiness, though,
Of course
right?
we do. It doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, cash can make things easier in life. Of course it can. But material things are nice to have. But, you don't have to have Molton Brown hand wash, although it is very nice. Some, $1.99 from Corport, Asda will do. It does the same job.
Yeah.
But I said to Kate, I said, I just can't carry on. And she said, please, just go to your GP. Please, go to your GP. Please.
Mm.
I said to her, I went years ago. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. I'm trapped. I'm trapped in this world of amazing things, but I'm just not authentic. I'm just not being myself. So she pleaded with me to go to my GP and made me promise that I would. So on my way home, I went to my GP and I made an appointment. And because it wasn't an emergency appointment, it was like a week and a half, 2 weeks later. And it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. And I arrived about 4 o'clock. I was early. So I had a nap in the car park. I'm just about to tell my GP the biggest thing. So I had a little power nap.
Yeah.
And my alarm went off at like 4:25. I was like, oh, best go in. So I kind of wandered into the GP surgery, flashed my name up on the door. I went in and just told her. She just says, well, this is something I know quite a lot about because there's 3 or 4 people in our village who have transitioned. I'm like, have
Really?
they? Where? I've not, because trans people are all around us.
Yes.
So, you know, we've been here for a long, long, long time. And she got me on the pathway, and I was quite lucky because I got in before. I hate saying this, I was lucky. I got in before a rush because there shouldn't be a rush. You know, there was from 2014 onwards, the waiting lists have really got out of control. In the fact that I was seen within the 14-week period, and then I was on the pathway. I was seen at the gender identity clinic within a couple of months. So, and I was on where now it can be up to 3 years. So if you go see your GP to be referred, it can be 3 years before you get your first appointment.
And the process, it's a long process.
It's a long process.
Because you had to, 2012, you started your psychotherapy, 2
Yeah.
years of that.
Yeah.
And then you made the decision
Yeah.
to go for hormones and then eventually the operation. So it's a long process.
Because I said to them, I said, look, of course I need to transition. I need to do this. But is there a coping mechanism? Is there something, is there a pill you can give me or something to make this go away? Because honestly, I wanted it to go. I wanted it, but you can't. I was hardwired. My brain formed opposite to what I Googled brain transplants. They don't do brain transplants. I Googled them.
But if you could have, would you have, at the time, just had something to deal with the feelings rather than have something to take you through the process?
At that point, only because I was lost. I was just, that's when I first went in. My first words were, I just need something to just make this go away. And the more I educated myself on it, the more I learned is the fact that for me, this was the right thing to transition. It was absolutely, and my word, has it been the right thing.
So was there a point when you've gone through your transition, is there a moment where you finally think, I am the person that was meant to be? Or is it a more nuanced, gradual process?
Yeah, it's more nuanced, gradual, because what happens is, and I wish I'd explained this to people at the start, but when you're going through it, your world is turned upside down. My mum died, I'd got all that to deal with, I'd got lots of stuff going off. And I wish I'd explained to people, because that when you come out or when you announce this, people see this version of you, which is not the finished article. You know, hormones have got to do their work, you've got to have hair removal, it's a long process. But people see what they see and go, that's the finished article, that's what you're going to look like for the rest of time. No, it's not. It takes time for your body to change, you know, for my voice to change. I had lots of speech therapy and all sorts of stuff, using your head voice instead of your chest voice, because that was important to me because of being a broadcaster and using this thing, this tool that I've got. I'm only 5'7". I was always skinny and spindly and quite feminine anyway. So luckily my body and I was late with puberty anyway, and my testosterone level was quite low. So I was very lucky in that respect, that my body responded well to hormone treatment. So I wish I'd explained that to people at the start, that actually it's something that is a process of time, and you've got to go through quite a long process of stuff. It can take up to 7-8 years to kind of get somewhere that you think, right, I think this is about it now, and I think I'm just going to get old. This is pretty much, this is it.
I think that's how all of us feel at some point.
I think it is sometimes, isn't it?
So finally then, I mean, do you feel like the world is set up now for you to be who you want to be? We're in a more enlightened period than we've been. I think it's fairly obvious we're not there yet. When you look at stats from Stonewall, for instance, that 1 in 5 LGBTQ have experienced hate crime, 2 in 5 trans have experienced hate crime in the past year alone. But do you personally feel, though, like we are in a place where you can be who you want to be?
It's better than it's ever been, but we're not quite there yet. I think for trans people, we are where people who were fighting in the 1980s, well, 70s and 80s, and of course, you know, Section 28 arrived in, what was it, 88?
Yeah, I think so.
So all of that happened. So the fight to change all that, where people who were gay and lesbian were in the 1980s, that is where trans people are right now, fighting for that equality. And there are lots of people that say, you know, LGBT should be split off. But I think I really do think we're stronger together, because things evolve, don't they? You know, Stonewall the charity themselves have said, you know, there's the whole founder syndrome thing, isn't there, as well? And I think there's been some headlines in the last few days about that. But things evolve, and I think we're stronger together. And being on panels like this that I'm about to be on, you know, at the Festival of Arts here in Leeds, it opens up a conversation. And it's all well and good banging a drum and all sorts of stuff, but having conversation is the way to try and change things. And that's why I'm sitting here today talking to you about this. And you know me quite well. I seldomly do interviews on this kind of stuff. But when I feel it's important that we can change things in a controlled environment and we can have an open and honest conversation about it, I'm there. You're not going to find me on Twitter getting Twitter angry about this kind of stuff. It's not what I do. I may not join marches, but what I will do is I'll get involved in conversations. I'll never debate my existence, ever. Because
you shouldn't have to.
You shouldn't have to.
What's the debate?
Yeah, exactly. There should never be. You see these debates on television, people for and against. I'm like, no, I exist.
There is no debate.
Yeah. And for anyone that struggles and goes, I don't get it, well, you shouldn't get it.
Yeah.
But what you should do is accept, because acceptance, it's an emotion, isn't it, that we can all control. And all you got to do is just open your mind a little bit to, you know, a child that's got learning difficulties or ADHD or something like that. You know, that was biology again, just sometimes getting things a little bit different. And that's the only thing that happened with me. Biology's got things a little bit different. And you just ask for acceptance and just to be open-minded about things.
Yeah. Well, of course you have it. You should do here, certainly. Anyway, and keep up fighting the good fight as well. So thank you for being honest. Thank you for talking to us today. It makes a massive difference to people, I know. And it's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks, Jono.